Are you ready to embark on a transformative journey? Hi, I am Sharon Kumara, host of Awaken Soul. By tuning into Awaken Soul Radio, you will be inspired to shed the illusions that bind you, connect more deeply with your inner wisdom, and step into a liberating life of freedom, clarity, and purpose. Each episode, I share stories and lessons learned that help cultivate greater compassion, patience, and understanding, qualities to embody in everyday life. I invite you to join in as we expand our awareness, exploring diverse topics, and gain access to practical tools, guided exercises, and expert advice to help overcome fears and break the chains that bind us. Join us on Awaken Soul. Your journey to freedom and true self begins here. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome to Awaken Soul Radio. And I am your host, Sharon Kumara. And I'm here with my guest today, Cosmic Andy. Hello, Andy.
Hi, Sharon. Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course, it's always a pleasure. Andy has some mind-blowing experiences, I will say. So I always love talking with him. And since he's shared a lot with me because we run in the same circles here locally and on here I've heard a lot of his experiences, but I'm sure there's many more that I haven't heard, so it's always good to talk with him, with you, Andy, and here I always learn so much from your experiences as well, so thank you for being here.
Well, yeah, I'm honored to be here, and I'm grateful for you. We met a few years back through a mutual friend, Kira, and coming to one of the events that you host. Actually, even before that, now that I'm going back farther, we had, I think, maybe crossed paths at ECETI. I know
Yes.
I met your sister there,
Mm-hmm.
and before even going up to ECETI years, 4, 5, 6 years ago, whatever it was, I remember when I was still on Facebook. I'm not really on social media now. I remember seeing I started taking orb pictures, not to you and your sister's level, but I got a couple of orb pictures. I was just, as part of my reawakening, and just like, wow, this is amazing. These are real. This isn't just dust and light, and I came across, so I started liking orb pages, and sure enough, the algorithm starts sending you more people that send orb pictures, and then I came across the orb sisters, you and your sister, and the pictures that you capture. Or I shouldn't say, I don't know if capture is the right word, but the pictures you guys get of everything from orbs to spirits and energies, and just so beautiful. And so it was such a synchronicity for me when I finally, I'm at the ECETI, I turn around, I'd seen this online. I had no idea your sister was going to ECETI that weekend, and I'm talking to a friend, and here this lady comes up from behind. She's like, "Hey, I got a really cool picture of an orb right above you guys talking." And we're like, turn around, like, what? And she shows me this picture, and there's this giant orange orb right above, like right on my shoulder, in between me and the person talking. And I was like, it was like the biggest orb I've seen in person that somebody actually took right there. And so then I started, through talking, we connected the dots that she was the Orb sisters. And then, here a couple years later, I can't remember if we actually met at ECETI, but I remember that. And then I remember, 3 years, 4 years ago, our friend Kira had introduced me or invited me to come to your UFO and contactee meeting, where people, in the Portland metro area come and share their experiences and search for answers, and kind of in a way a therapy group for experiencers, just because we're able to openly share our experiences without the harsh judgment that a lot of society still has. That said, I do think we're going through an awakening where even people who 5 or 10 years ago or 20 years ago wouldn't have been open to this subject matter are there's some chinks in the armor. There's some cracks in the wall. There's I have friends, parents, and grandparents that years ago when I talked about this thought I was crazy, and now they're coming full circle and talking about a near death experience, and they had a loved one pass, and they had like an angelic spirit in the room. And so what I can tell you is this is an exciting time to be alive, and I'm so grateful to be here and to our connection, and then full circle coming from the meetings to you started inviting me. I think earlier this year, last year, into one of the weekly or monthly shows that you do, and so now I'm here, and so I honestly just feel grateful for this whole process, the way it has unfolded, and you've been such a key figure in just having the confidence to not only share your own experience, and your book is amazing, your connections with Christ and the awakening, and how he helped you through some really dark days, the dark night of the soul, so to speak, to awaken, and then um, you know to now where you're holding space for so many other people to share their experiences, and to be kind of a real light within the community of folks awakening. And so again, long-winded, I am long-winded. Thank you for all you're
No,
doing
I
for
love
me.
it. No, thank you, and thank you for your kind words. And well, that's kind of what these format or platforms are all about, I feel, and with me anyway, at least is to help people that maybe are having strange experiences, what we would call strange. After a while, they just start to become normal, right? And when you're
Yeah,
having strange experiences and you don't have anyone you can talk to and don't know who to talk to about it and don't have a support group, can see that maybe you're not so crazy after all. Because I know I thought I was crazy 20 something years ago when I started remembering my childhood, but also having experiences at that time that went along with my memories in Dark Night of the Soul. Yeah. So
yeah,
thank you for saying all that. And we did meet at a SETI first. I remember that. Yeah. But my sister was who you talked to most.
yeah.
Yeah. And she got
And
a
that's why
really
I
cool
didn't think
orb.
we interacted that much, but I
Yeah.
now I realizing that you were there, and we did say hi and we talked, but I was so focused on that picture she got.
You know what's funny about those orbs is that um I believed in I think even James Gilliland, by the way, those who don't know what Isetti is a ranch in Trout Lake,
Trout Lake.
Washington, at the base of Mount Adams, that is run by James Gilliland, and it stands for extra wait,
Enlightened contact with extraterrestrial intelligence.
thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes. And if you go there, and you can go there, especially now during, during the nice months of the year, and experience really cool stuff, ships that come out of the mountain. They're always in the sky. I swear, I promise you, if you go there and look at the skies, you're going to see something. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And you can stay there. You can rent cabins and tents and stuff like that, or you can just go for the night. And he charged a minimum $12 or something just to sit out there in the field and look at the skies and hang out with people. It just has amazing energies. But back to the orb,
Yes.
Sasquatch show up in orange orbs.
Yes. Yes.
You know
I
that.
was wondering if you're going to say that. At the time, I didn't fully appreciate that, but now I've learned more and connected more dots. And I do, I do think that, yeah, there was definitely, I've had my own experiences with Sasquatch up at East Eddy. And then I also, because I know we talked before that maybe I was going to share some childhood stuff, I can, I can share an experience I had where I saw, some of my guides, my higher self, my soul family came to me, and actually I was so curious. They were allowing me to see a whole bunch of things, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'll just share a couple of big Sasquatch
Please.
experiences. One night we're a lot of people at East Eddy, let alone the Pacific Northwest, Mount Adams, Canada, Mount Hood, Mount St. Helens, Mount Rainier, just this whole area everybody knows is world famous because there does appear to be, something in the forest. And so I've gone down this rabbit hole with friends. I've come to my own personal conclusions now. It doesn't mean I'm right, but I have my own theories. And I look at Sasquatch really more as almost like on a higher realm or frequency than we are, and that maybe they've always been here, and that they're not just a big dumb ape or anything like that that's eluded humans. I really feel like, I have friends that go out and have done Bigfoot hunting trips and even been on some of the shows where they're looking for Bigfoot. And more often than not, than actually seeing a big hairy, creature being, they a lot of times they do see energy orbs in the forests. And a lot of the times when they've seen them, they're, the actual ones, they're more orangish, like you mentioned earlier. And so one night at ECETI, I'm sitting with a group of people. There's probably 100 people or 80 people out that night, like between 9, 10, 11, 12. I stayed up particularly late till almost 2 or 3 in the morning sky watching. And there was a small group of people out at this time. And we were talking and sharing experiences. And it really was amazing and synchronistic the way people would be telling, they felt comfortable enough in such high frequency and good energy that people were sharing kind of intimate personal stories like this and of childhood. And we'd look up and all of a sudden there'd be a flash in the sky and or a UFO would like shoot by and we'd just like almost felt like a validation, like they were validating some of the conversations and dialogues that were happening. Maybe it was just total random, but that's the way it seemed. And so we're out there and everybody's feeling pretty high vibe. And ECETI's, a big 80-acre ranch. And they have like a, 30, 40-acre just open field looking directly at Mount Adams. And we're all there in lawn chairs just looking at the mountain like you do. You sit and just kind of watch the mountain and sky watch and talk. And so it was about 2:33 in the morning. I don't know exactly, but it was late. And there was probably 8 or 10 people out there kind of spread out amongst an area. And a lot of people talk about the Bigfoot where they knock on like the trees or they hit a stick or something. Well, in the out probably 30, 40 yards from the group on the right side of there's trees, open field, and then trees. And so on the right side, we heard a giant crack. And I'm not just a little crack, later somebody went and looked and there was a branch like 10, 12 inches in diameter that had come off this tree and were like, and so it wasn't that windy. So it was like, what happened? It literally sounded like something just ripped a branch off the thing. And so everybody got quiet and looked over. And then in the distance, we see a shadowy figure. It's like something moving, but it's dark and it's far away. So you can't really gauge, but it was huge. It had to be at least 8, 9 feet tall. Like it was almost two normal humans, like just in the distance seeing this thing move. And again, we're really trying to focus because it's at night and it's dark and you just see this big object like moving. We're like, what is that? What is that? And all of a sudden, it morphed or it disappeared, it changed, it shifted, and there's this orange orb the size of like a small yoga ball, like a really small yoga ball, hovering across the field. And we're like, and when this lady who people were talking, like, oh my God, it's Sasquatch. It just all happened so fast. I was like, what? Because I'd been looking up for stuff in the sky. We heard the crash. We see something moving or running. All of a sudden, there's this orb going across exactly where the thing had been running. And then it goes, and there's this big tree on this side of the field, and it goes right into the tree. And so that led to a whole conversation that night, awakening for me. And I truly believe now that, Sasquatch are almost like multidimensional. They can phase shift or they can lower their vibration enough to come into our 3-dimensional realm, but can quickly shift back up by just speeding up almost like their own Merkaba rotation of the energy field within their body. And when they do that, they go into like an energy orb. They're like formless in this realm. They can become fully formed giant, hairy, big humanoid thing, but they also can literally just shift like that, just like hitting the button. And all of this thing shifted and went into the tree, which led to a conversation. All these Bigfoot shows, they're out there looking for like nests for or some cave or tunnel that the Bigfoot's living in. And I'm like, y'all ain't never going to find that. Because what I saw, yes, it lives in the tree, but it phase shifts and goes into the tree. And then I literally think can like move through the trees, can like go through solid objects. This where it gets into, I think is more multidimensional, but it is a real thing. and that's why you're never going to go out and find a body of it, because I
Right.
really think it's a higher frequency being.
Right. I agree totally.
Okay.
Yeah, and
So
you know what's sorry to interrupt you, Andy, but I just
no, please
wanted to
go.
before I forget, because it'll go in one ear in one side and out the other, that there's I saw I talked to another woman he said he explained and shared an experience just like that where she got up really early in the morning to use the restroom and she saw a Sasquatch walking across the field. And he turned and looked at her and she said she heard a telepathic message, okay, you saw me, now go back to bed, because she was praying that she wanted to see a Sasquatch. Apparently she has some real connection with them. And as soon as he said that, she saw him take a couple steps forward and turn into an orb and
Hmm.
float off. Yeah. And what's
Yeah.
interesting as well is with the orange orbs, I don't remember what color she said it was, but she said it was an orb. There's a documentary out about Sasquatch, and I can't remember the name of it, but I think it's on Prime, Amazon Prime. Really, really good documentary, and where people describe their experiences with Sasquatch. It's all positive stuff. And this one gentleman and someone was with him. It was two friends. They were on the side of the road. Their truck broke down or something like that, and they saw a Sasquatch 20 or 30 feet from them cross the road and it didn't I don't believe the Sasquatch looked at them, but he bent down, squatted down, and made his body into a ball and turned into an orange orb and floated off.
Yeah.
But you know what's really cool is I interviewed a woman not too long ago where she had a near death experience, and during her near death experience she remembered how to turn into an orb herself. I said, "Well, how do you do that? How did you do it?" Because, that's what I believe orbs are spirit energy, right? They're sentient.
Hmm.
I
Yep.
know they're sentient because of the work we do with orbs, but she said all I did was kind of squat down and roll up into a ball and it just happened.
It's almost involuntary at their level. They don't really have to think about how they do it. They can just do it.
Right.
Um, yeah, that I've had some times where I shouldn't even say I was in meditation. This was just like when I was a kid in like a crazy dream, and these higher dimensional beings, I think they were little Arcturian guys, and they were standing around me, and I kind of came half to, like, at first I was a little bit like, who is this? What is this? And then all of a sudden I like internally shifted to like, oh, hey guys. Like I just knew who they were and I'd always known who they were. And they were showing me about the energy flow. And if I focus on like rotating my energy flow and counterclockwise, like one going one way, one going to the other, you actually get a natural lift from the prana and the chi energy, like react. I mean, maybe I'm not saying that right. And going in opposite directions, you can literally start to levitate. And I think that like these higher dimensional beings, it's so easy for them just to like we take a breath, just to like mentally control where their energy flows, and just by that happening you can
Wow.
levitate and fly
Right.
and manifest and almost open your own portal and go through it, just
Yes,
space
totally.
ship, you know.
Isn't that called, is that called a toroidal field or toroidal?
Yes.
Is that what that
Yeah.
is? Okay.
Yeah.
When I do meditation or meditations, when I do sessions and things like that, I always lead with open up the space and create a sacred space for the session. My guidance has led me to bring down golden light and bring up white light, and for them to spiral together in opposite
Hmm.
directions.
Yep.
And I didn't even think about that it might have something to do that. Well, it's always to lift our energy, but our frequency, but that makes sense.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. That
Yeah,
spinning field of the polarities, right? The masculine and the
right.
feminine energies coming from
Totally.
different points and going, it literally, you just lift off.
Yeah,
And so um
I love that. So
yeah.
let's go back to your a little bit of your childhood, if you could share for people that are watching, uh how you
Yeah.
started remember, or how you remembered your experiences, or
Yeah.
when you were remembering, I'm trying to say. When you're
So it certainly I think I mentioned this before. When I was a kid, I kept having like a reoccurring dream, and in the dream, I really think it was more of a soul memory that was like popping through, almost that I left myself. I felt like I knew I was going to be quote unquote deployed on Earth or go back to Earth, my consciousness, and I was going to forget everything. Because even as powerful and strong and all these things as I thought or I was up there, I knew coming down here, just that veil is so heavy. I actually have that a memory of planning certain parts of my life here, and um, I know that's weird to some people, but I as things started happening when I was a little kid, I started realizing, you know, a lot of real negative stuff happened to me early on, and I felt like I had knew that was going to happen, and so as some of these things were happening, I was almost having like deja vu about seeing it happen, and then I was actually there experiencing it happen, and um, and so early on, I was born on the planet Earth blue. The umbilical cord got wrapped around my neck when 8.5 months, and they back then they weren't sure about doing a C-section, and so when I was born, I actually came out blue. My heart was stopped, and all my mom remembers because I'm the second child. I have an older sister. All my mom remembers is essentially like kind of being panicked. Is the baby okay? Is the baby okay? And they like basically like gave her a shot to like knock, kind of like calm her down or basically knock her out because she was a distressed mother. My dad, they told him it's okay. We're going to take your son. He's going to be fine. They knew that, we had, my parents had a 15-month-old girl at home. The grandma and grandpa were watching, and my dad had to get home. And so they basically said, go ahead and, we'll take care of your son. Come back tomorrow morning. Everything will be fine. So my dad left. My mom got knocked out. So I'm born on the planet blue with the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck. My parents don't basically see me until like the next morning.
wow.
And so where I'm going with all that is I actually think that was planned in a weird way. I had like a near death experience as soon as I was born onto the planet, and I think in some way that allowed me to retain a little bit more energy, consciousness, memory from before. So I'm a pretty intuitive little kid. Um, I could always remember looking at my parents or my grandparents or neighbors across the street, and I could see energy or things moving behind them, like they're in their field or their energy field, or even at times like faces would come up behind people. So you'd be standing there looking at like, I remember vividly. I'm probably 3.5, 3 years old, 3.5. I'm holding my mom's hand. She was like had exchanged, borrowing sugar or something from the neighbor lady across the street, who was an older lady, and she was a smoker. And my mom walked over, and the little old lady's happy to see like a cute little kid, and I'm a cute little kid with chubby cheeks, and she wants to grab my cheek and the whole bit. And I remember when this lady bent down to look at me, I literally saw like an entity attachment, like a demon or something attached to her. So as this little old lady's looking at me, I'm looking at her shoulder, and there's this thing attached to her, and I can see it, and
Wow.
that scared me. So I started getting really afraid really early as a little kid, because I kept seeing things on people. I didn't know what it meant, and I couldn't even verbalize even to my parents what was happening. And so then I remember I have an older sister. My older sister is very strong personality. She's a social worker now, so she had to be a strong personality. But back then, she was kind of a bully to her little brother. And so what I mean by that is like I would be nice and sweet, and I was the sensitive one, and she was like the strong one. And so I remember one time like she pulled my arm out of my socket when we were little kids, because like I was trying to grab something and she wanted it. She just jerked and it like pulled my arm out. So where I'm going with all this is like I got injured, I was sick. There was a lot of generational stuff I've learned in my family on both sides that needed to be healed, and that I truly believe now I'm not the one who's healing it, but I'm a conduit to some of this healing for not only me on a personal level and my oversoul, but also I think on a DNA level for my bloodline, and and even for my soul families and in different aspects on the higher realms that I'm connected to. And I think this type of thing goes for everyone. I don't think I'm any more special than anyone else. I'm just saying I'm making these connections as my life has gone on, and I'm kind of reawakening to things. And
Right.
so, but when I was little, I was very intuitive because of some of these experiences. And when kids would say, "Oh, there's something under the bed or something in the closet," me and my sister both remember when we were little at different points. There really was. I was sleeping in the middle of the night. It's 2 or 3 in the morning, and I feel a presence at the end of the bed, and I just know it's not my mom or dad, and I'm too afraid to open my eyes. Um, and so I remember one time I actually got out of my bed, ran downstairs in my parents' house. It was a 2-story house. My dad had a little shop in the garage. I ran in the shop and I hid next to the HVAC unit because I was small enough to kind of hide in this little corner. Me and my sister had played hide and go seek before, so I knew it was there, and I went and hid. And I remember having my eyes shut and just like holding my eyes like this. And this being comes walking down the stairs, walks directly to me. And this is what I hear telepathically in my head. Come on, Andy. You know we don't have time for this shit. We're on a tight schedule. Let's go.
Oh.
And I'm like, what? And I open my eyes, and there's this little being standing there, not a gray that everybody talks about. This guy had a little bit more of a cone head, oval head, and he was in a white jumpsuit, and he had like a little collar on it that went around. And he was holding some kind of a tablet or something in his hand. And I
Oh.
just looked at him and I was like, what? And then I don't remember anything. And so, not that long after that, I'm sleeping. That happened when I'm like 4.5, maybe 5. So when between like 4.5, 5, 6, there was a lot happening. I think every single night things were coming to check on us or were looking at us. I could just feel energies at night. And I also sometimes could feel really negative energies. Like things were trying to like get me, and you know, I had some night terror type stuff.
Mhm.
I'm a grown man now, and so I'm not afraid to say it. But I was one of the kids that like peed the bed until I was like in first grade. The reason for that is this scary shit was happening at night when I was asleep, and
Yeah.
my mom said I was a deep sleeper, like I wouldn't wake up. I now realize some of the reasons I didn't wake up is because I honestly think my consciousness, when my body was sleeping, was being grabbed, and I was up at the higher realms doing all these other things.
Mhm.
And so, I realize that now. Um, and so, anyway, go flash
Yeah, when
forward.
you're a kid, it's just scary. You don't understand
It's
any
all
of
even
that.
the good guys were scary
Right. Yeah.
because they look different.
Mhm.
And then that kind of led to me like even some of like the female figures. Normally, the feminine energies, like if for a kid, is easier to grasp than the masculine energy. Generally speaking, some of the female energy I didn't that scared me too. There was some darkness
Yeah.
in different places that was
You
coming.
you
And
know,
so
it's hard um sorry to interrupt you there, but
yeah,
this thought just came to me, you know, with people would have experiences where there's beings in their room.
yeah,
It's really scary because you expect your house to be your safe space. You expect your room to be your safe space.
yeah,
And there's beings in your bedroom, which is we want and we think is our safe space, that our parents create this safe
yeah.
space for us, or this our family. And so when they're in your safe space, that is it's hard to have trust.
It is.
Yeah.
And some of the things I'll share a couple more experiences, all that happened during that time frame. So I've told you this one before, Sharon, where I wake up, I'm like in a half trance. I lived in North Portland. I'm not going to get too much into the details, but I lived in North Portland, and there was a park a quarter mile down the street, a major park that everybody goes to. I knew how to go to. I'd been there many times. And I'm 5 or 6 years old. and I'm in a half trance, and I'm in my pajamas, and it's like 3 in the morning, and I'm walking down to that park. And I have like a lucid moment where I kind of wake up and I'm like, where am I going? It's cold out. Like, what's going on? And I see kids from all these different streets surrounding this park that are in the middle of the night, have walked out of their parents' house in like a trance, right out of something out of one of the movies, and are walking down to walk up onto this ship that's landed there to get a checkup and then go back home and then go back to their house.
Wow.
And so, I mean, there's little black kids, white kids, Indian kids, Mexican kids. I was very multicultural where I lived. Everybody was represented. We were all going. If you were between the ages of 5 and 7, you got a checkup.
That's crazy. And I have to share this.
Yeah.
I think it was one of the first or second time you were at the support group, and I
Yeah.
had just had a hypnosis session, QHHT session to recover memories and things like that. And in that session, the day before the support group, I had a memory come up where I was actually taken from my room, according to the memory. And I grew up in Oregon too, but not Portland area. This was in Mount Angel. And I'm taken from my room and taken on the ship. My sister and I actually, both of us, are taken on the ship, and we're separated because we're not the same age, and we're separated. And there's doctors doing checkups on us and things like that. And I see a bunch of kids around, and they're doing checkups, and they're kind of tranced out. And then, and I'm like, that is nuts. And then the
Yeah.
next day, you're at the support group and you share that memory. I mean, you share that, and it just blew me away. Confirmed my wow, that's crazy. So, so this has been going on. I wonder if that's still going on where kids are being taken. I hope not, but because I don't
I
know.
think they've got. I think they're still checking up on their people that are deployed down on Earth. That's what I look at it like.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the
And some of it's authorized. Some of it, you knew your people were going to come check on you because you were in a body and you forgot everything. And
that's
so
true.
this is one story I want to get to. Well, let me just continue. The last
Okay,
story.
sorry. I
So I
interrupted.
walk up on
Yeah.
the ship. I don't really remember anything. It was a big like disc. This one was actually a big disc shape, and it literally just had the drawbridge come down, and everybody walked up and walked off. There was people like checking people like John, Susie, Khalil, literally just on and off. Okay. So I'm walking again out of the trance. Now I'm realizing I'm walking away from the ship back up the hill because it was up a gradual hill, and I get and I'm barefoot. I'm barefoot walking on the concrete on the street, like walking, and I get to my house. Remember, I don't remember coming out of the house. I came to when I was walking down.
Mhm.
I walked to the house. My door's locked. It's still 3:30 in the morning. My parents are sleeping. For all I know, my siblings are sleeping. Our dog's not barking. The door's locked, and I have this moment where I'm like, I literally like looked up to the right and go, what do I do? Like, and literally
Like
I just hear,
asking them.
and the door unlocked, and I went in, and I went around, and I locked it behind me, and I went up and got in my bed, and and then I didn't remember it in the morning until later.
Yeah,
It comes back after the fact.
right.
But I remember my mom saying, "Why are your feet so dirty? Didn't you take a shower before bed?" Like I do remember that. So there's these little weird synchronicities of things that I do remember happening, and then like I was like, "Wait a minute, that's the night that memory was." You know. Um,
My parents would find me in different places in the house, like the closet or the front room, or I'd be sleeping there out of my bed, and we just figured, or they just figured that I was sleepwalking.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, who knows? But maybe that's a different kind of sleepwalking, though. That's crazy,
well,
craziness.
well, I'll tell you. So another thing that happened, I've shared this before, so I'll try to go quicker. But like, I just want to throw this in there.
Yeah.
I I'm sleeping one night. Me and my sister had gotten in, or I'm going to bed. My sister and I gotten into a fight like siblings do. We're little kids. We cry. She's 7.5. I'm 6. My mom said, "Go up, brush your teeth, go to bed." So we go to our rooms. I'm laying there and I'm like just mad as can be at my sister. And gosh, Bonnie, we had to go to bed early because, I'm a kid. I'm like, and then I'm so frustrated that I start crying. Well, then crying, of course, is an emotional release. So then I actually go from being really angry to be like, I didn't even like feeling like that. I don't like feeling that angry. I don't want to feel good. I want to feel, loving. I want everyone to feel loving, and I'm like, kind of, that's my line of thinking as I'm going to bed. And I remember right before I'm about to transition to like falling asleep all the way, this thought pops in my head from like the week earlier, because the week earlier I'd gone to a Lutheran church with my grandparents, which we didn't. My parents didn't. We didn't go to church, but my grandparents did. And so it was one of the times that I like first times I remember going. I'd gone when I was younger, but I was so little I don't remember. And so I remember going, and that particular sermon on that day, the pastor was talking, and he was quoting and talking about angels in heaven, and angels and warrior angels. He just had this whole sermon that was talking about angels on the day I was there. And that resonated with me. I was like, what? There's warrior angels? They don't just have to be nice to people? They can actually beat up the bad guys? I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. So that had been playing in the back of my head. Okay. So as I'm falling asleep, I'm just like, I want everyone to be loved. I love my sister, I love my family. I want everything to be good. And then I'm thinking, there's angels, then there's, God. And then the pastor had been talking about how like God speaks to people. And so I thought to the universe internally. I didn't say it, but I said, God, why don't you talk to me? I'm a good person. I'm good. I want to do good. Why don't you talk to me? I'll do what you say. What do you know? And so that's the last thing I was thinking before I went to REM sleep. I just had this emotional release from my sister fighting. I was thinking about angels. And then I was asking God, why don't you talk to me?
Mm.
And so I fall asleep, and all of a sudden there's a electricity in the room. Like even as I was sleeping, I could feel a shift. I wasn't sure what it was, and then I felt somebody at the end of the bed, and I had a split moment where I like wasn't sure if maybe my mom had or dad had come to check on us to make sure we were sleeping. So you can feel their presence sometimes, even if you don't say or move, right?
Yeah.
And then there's an electricity in the room, and then there's kind of a blue glow in the room, and then there's a shift, and I felt the shift because it was like, whoa, something happened, and now everything's colder. It was like 5 or 10 degrees colder from me being wrapped in my bed. And all of a sudden, I'm laying on a, I was laying in my bed. Now I'm laying on like a table. And I'm like, I realize I'm somewhere different and something's happened. And I'm kind of afraid to open my eyes. But I start to open my eyes, and there's these two little beings that come up on either side of the bed or the table. And they didn't have like the black almond shaped eyes from the normal grays. They had like a human being eye that was literally like this big on either side. Almost like when you look at some of those fish, like you see the big fish eyes, like huge. And I was just like, oh my gosh, what the heck? And I'm starting to kind of panic a little bit because what I'm seeing is like beyond what I was expecting and a little overwhelming. And then all of a sudden I realize there's a presence like behind my head, like standing at the foot of this table. And this presence is super tall. Like these guys are like 3.5, 4 feet tall. This guy's like 9 or 10 or 11 feet tall and skinny, long fingers, long, and he bends all the way down like this to the point where his big eyes that were also human shaped literally like our foreheads almost touch while he's looking at me like this. And I realized while he's looking at me, he's he's going through my memory bank, even to the point where I think he was somehow going all the way back to not who's Andy in this life, but who were you before? Like, I know that sounds weird, but this guy was doing telepathic stuff where he was looking into my soul on who I was and who I was connected to and what was right.
Mm-hmm.
And I get the sense that he was kind of amazed that I was able to see them and that whatever frequency I was putting out as I was going to sleep, like got the attention. And so they swooped in to look at it, me. And then all of next thing I know, there's a shift and I'm sitting up in a chair. And in the chair in front of me, there's these little guys around me still, like kind of standing. There's a couple more of them, 3 or 4 of them. And I start like, who are you? Does God does God know you're doing this? Because remember, I was just trying to. I'm like, who, who are you? What do you want? Where are you from? Does God know you're doing this? I think I even said you're going to get in trouble, kind of like something like that. And the response back from the one is I hear my own child voice. I hear my voice talking back to me in my head in a little bit different cadence. And the exact things it says is, were you coming to check on you to remind you who you are?
Whoa, I got
And
goosebumps.
and I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm like, what? But my ears are ringing and all this stuff's going on. And they're just looking at me like they're like excited. They're like happy to see me and looking at me. And so I'm like, well, where are you from? That's the next thing I think to say. Where are you from? And this isn't a conversation. This is like a telepathic back and forth.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like they tried to answer me. Like literally this right out of Star Wars or Star Trek, this holographic map a star map comes across in front of me. And they're showing me here, like lights up. Here's Earth. Here's this. We went through here, came here, did this, and now and I'm like, what? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know these stars. I don't know where this is. Where are you from? And that's all. That's almost the last thing I remember. Next thing you know, I'm back in my bed. I'm back in my bed. And I sit up and I'm still kind of telepathically connected, even though I'm back in my bed. And I'm completely sit up awake as much as I'm awake right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hear in my head, go look out the window. And so I hop up and I go look out the window. And my house was looking towards PIR, the racetrack in Portland, Oregon. Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm looking out towards PIR, and there is a giant golden, like, craft, like, orb. And on the top of the orb, it has like all these different colored lights, like you'd see of the city skyline, right? And it's just hovering there in the sky. And I realized, holy, I was just on that thing. Like I was, what the, and next thing you know, it like blinks and then shoots off, and it leaves a streak of gold across the sky for like 2 to 3 seconds, almost like Tinkerbell when she flies off. And there's a little, it was like this magic, and they were gone. I
Wow.
instantly felt the disconnect from the telepathy connection that I had been feeling, which is weird the first time, no doubt. It's weird, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't hurt. It's not painful. It's not scary. It was just different. When it disconnected, I knew they were actually gone, and I instantly started crying. And I just had this feeling like that was my family,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm here on Earth with these people. And
Mm-hmm.
so I run into my parents' room at like 3:30 in the morning. I try to wake up my mom, mom. And she's like, what? This time by this age, she has 3 kids, all, under, 6 or 7. She has my brother's like 2.5. And so she does the, like a mom, typical mom, like open the covers up, pulls me in, covers over me, and she's out. And I'm like laying in my mom's arms, being held. I'm totally loved. And I'm like crying because I'm like, they love me with these people.
That is crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
crazy. I love
And so
that.
then,
I love that. Yeah. I had a really quick similar experience where I had an out of body experience or reality shift, whatever you want to call it. And I was with these beings and I was at a library, like they call themselves the university keepers. And they were wearing robes, like gray robes. And they called me a different name and they asked me how it was on Earth. And I just remember saying, I felt like I was home. Okay. And I just remember saying, uh, Earth is challenging, but it has its rewards. And they said, well, tell us all about it. And so then I was giving my report, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And they were all so happy to see me and excited and everything. And then as I'm giving my report, I didn't have bring back that memory except for what I said, and I didn't bring back the name they called me either. But I'm in my bed, back in my bed, and I start crying because I thought I was there. I thought I was done staying there. Not that I don't love Earth, in my life here, but
Yeah.
it's like I, it's probably the same type of feeling because I thought I was finished with the mission. Crazy.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Well, I'll
Yeah.
tell you, just to bring it full circle back to the Bigfoot stuff. So I had an experience, and again, and I'm not exactly sure the chronological order of this. It's a little hard, but I'm not sure if it happened before that experience I just told you or after. But it was a different group of beings that I was visually seeing, and I'm with my guides, and I'm kind of like pulled up slowly out of a dream. I'm in like a dreamlike state, and then in the dreamlike state, these people were really happy around me, and then they were like really good looking, and then I was just like, hey, you guys are really nice, and like this is all, like in the dream I was just like, oh, this is weird. And all of a sudden we kind of like kept shifting upward, and I felt like, I guess it just felt like there was a motion, like we were going upward. I got that sense, whether we were actually physically traveling up or not, or if it was a metaphor for the consciousness rising or something. I don't know. But I'm
Hmm.
going upwards, and I'm with these beings that first are good looking people, and then later they're like, again, 3 or 4 or 5 foot tall, not grays, but like ETs. Okay.
Yeah.
A little bit bigger head. Okay.
Right.
And I'm all of a sudden I'm sitting in this chair, and they're like, I'm like kind of like, I used to think it was just me thinking, but then I would start wondering if some of the different stuff is connected to some of these different groups. It's kind of hard to tell, but I basically, I didn't, I guess that's telepathy. I thought something, and before I even finished thinking it, like I knew the answer, and like it just kind of went on like that for a while. And I finally was like, well, if this is all true, I want to see some stuff. I want to see some stuff. And they're like, okay, we're going to start slow. And so I'm sitting in this chair, and there's a being on either side of me, like, one here, one here. I'm looking forward. We're in this, like, I believe it, I want to say it's like a hexagon shaped room. And it's only 10 foot around. It is not very big, hexagon shaped room. I'm sitting on the chair at this end of the room looking that way. And all of a sudden, just like in Star Trek where the doors, open, like the door opens and there's like a gray standing there.
Mm.
And I'm just like, so I kind of am able to visually see what the gray looks like. My guides are like, feel it. And so I'm like, kind of like feeling somehow with my sixth sense, my emotions, my intuition, what energy this being gives off. And then I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And so then the door shuts. And then I'm like, is there anything else I can see? And they're like, oh, yeah. And so then they open the door back up. And then there's a different being standing there that looks different than the first one. And I'm able to like, and it's a female. And she has like, it's hard to describe all of them. I'm not, but anyway, it was a different type of ET. And it was
Yeah.
standing there. And I was able to visually see it and then kind of tune into the energy. And then it even like briefly kind of was like, hey, how are you today? Just like a basic thing. So it's like they're allowing me to see these different types of beings. Um, and so as this goes on, the door just stays open. And now it's almost like a conveyor belt where now all of a sudden, like different beings are coming by, and I'm looking at them, seeing them, and feeling their energy for about 5, 10 seconds. And then it goes out of the picture, and then another one comes by. And so I'm seeing all different types of beings. And I'm like, oh, this isn't that bad. And these are all, again, the first they start with just the little guys or the good hearted energy ones. So they kind of feel good and okay, yeah, that's a little Yoda. Okay, yeah, yeah. Then they progressively start getting to like bigger things. And then I vividly remember all of a sudden there's like an 8.5 foot tall Sasquatch standing in front of me. And it's a masculine, very like alpha grandfather wise one.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh man, I instantly, it did nothing scary, but I was just intimidated, not only by the size and the energy, because I could tell that this being was so ancient and so wise and so strong. It was just intimidating. It'd be like a 5 or 6 year old seeing, the president or some big figure. They would be like, they're excited to see it, but also like a little nervous,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so that's what I'm feeling. And I'm just like, whoa. But this being was very loving and kind of loving towards me. And so then it goes along, and here's another Sasquatch. But it's what we would call a Sasquatch, but it was totally different. It was only like 6.5 feet tall, and it was feminine. And while the first one had like very dark hair with little hints of orange, like brown with just a hint of orange, this one was almost completely like black, with shorter hair, whereas the first one had longer hair. So it was like a different species of Sasquatch, and it
Mm.
was a female one. And so again, this is me getting pulled up from my guides on a ship or a higher realm, and at
Right.
like 6 years old and being able to see this. And so I got to see two. That's when I first saw Sasquatch, was on a UFO.
Wow. Yeah, I do believe that they do travel in ships. There's been
Yeah,
reports of seeing UFOs around Sasquatch sightings,
yeah.
or
And
ships.
so that experience goes on a little bit longer, where I see a couple more things, and then they start to show me some more negative polarity beings or energies. And first off, a couple of them look scary as heck when I saw like a reptilian type thing, let alone I felt its energy. I was like, I don't ever want to feel that again. That
A
doesn't feel
Draco?
good.
You talking about
I
Draco?
don't know if it was a Draco. I don't believe that was a Draco, but it was
Okay.
another, it was like maybe not a royal Draco big one, like a foot soldier
Yeah.
one. But
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. It had big golden eyes and was green and it was scaly, and it had a bad energy about it.
Mm.
And so, but then, later they end up showing me, I end up in my encounters seeing other stuff that, it's like every time I think I thought I would have it figured out, they would show me there was something else somewhere else that looked like that or somewhat similar, that actually was positive polarity, or of service to others, and was like, somewhat benevolent to humans, as opposed to, would be more predatory towards us or look at us like an insect, that it could care less about our well-being. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
And so anyway, yeah, I remember seeing that. And then I kind of, once we saw that, I was a little overwhelmed. And like, okay, that's enough for today. And then like I went back, I felt it move back down. And then I was back in a dream. And then I woke up. And I was like one of those dreams where I woke up where I was like, I don't think that was a dream. I think I was out of body in a higher realm, and my guides were showing me different beings. But again, like, how do I, when I'm 6, even fully process that? I just knew my mom's like, okay, Andy, time for school, get your stuff, and I'm just like, what? I got to
Eat
go
your
do this?
breakfast.
Yeah. I would
Eat your
always have these
bacon and
amazing
eggs. I
things
know.
that I wanted to tell people. And then it's like 3D hits you in the damn face. Like, you have to go to work, your alarm's off, or this or that. And I'm like, what?
I know,
Do you know?
right?
I didn't even sleep last night.
And then we and then we walk out into the dream. Yeah.
Yes.
We go we think that's a dream, but this is the dream. I guess it's all a dream, but yeah,
Yeah.
like just a very different dream. Wow, that's crazy. I love that. Yeah, I have okay, we're gonna have to, yeah, we'll stop here in a second. But I have memories of being on ships and seeing many different extraterrestrials, kind of like a Star Trek, Star Wars type of deal going on in the, the place where you have a couple drinks or you eat or whatever, and
10-4.
the 10-4, yeah, totally. And it's like, wow, this is crazy. I remember a blue drink in particular, a fuzzy blue drink that was really
Yes.
good. But in the experience, it's natural for me. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, so these are memories just slowly, I believe, bleeding through as
Yeah.
we wake up and our frequency raises.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just do one last little thing.
Sure.
This is focused on Bigfoot and then like aliens and UFOs and interdimensional beings. I'll bring it full circle with angel and demon stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I wanted you to share that story. I think I know which story you're gonna share. The
Yeah, so
Michael?
I'm sleeping. I do think sometimes sleep paralysis is just your body shutting down. So when you're in REM sleep, you don't kick and like punch and don't end up injuring yourself when you're sleeping. And so there's that part where like your body starts to fall asleep. And then there's a transition point where quite often right after that you get into REM sleep and you're actually connecting on the higher realms, I feel like, to different things, the angelic realms, your guides, your ancestors, your higher self, your team that's helping support you while you're down here on earth having this experience, all this stuff. Well, one of the times I basically had a sleep paralysis when I was a kid. And so again, I think that's a natural process. Everybody has that at some point.
Right.
Sometimes you're waking up out of a dream and your body, I've had to literally woken up a few times and literally had to say, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, in order to like even be able to move my arm because my
Yeah.
body was still asleep. So I've had
Mhm.
that kind of stuff happen. Well, this particular time, again, I'm 5 or 6, maybe 7 in that realm, range, and I'm sleeping, and I'm in a dream, or I don't know, I pop out of my body, basically, my astro body, and I'm like on the ceiling looking down at myself. And I was having like a sleep paralysis moment. I felt this pressure on my chest and this energy. And so when my I like popped out or remote view, basically like back down looking at myself, I saw that there was this again like yoga ball size black orb that just looked like gassy and black gas and smoke, and like that's what it looked like, and it was right above my chest as I'm sleeping as a kid. And I started to realize like I feel like seeing that like was validation for me almost, that like something is like siphoning my energy or trying to attack me or something's going on. And so I didn't know what to do. And again, I remembered back to going to church and the whole angels and Jesus and all the different stuff. And so in that moment, I couldn't even think to say the name Jesus help me or Mary help me or Michael help me. I literally just was like, help. I like sent out like a internal help because I was like under attack, I felt like.
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden, there's this whoosh down, and I feel myself, like my astro self, my consciousness, be grabbed from like from the ribs, like Mufasa style in Lion King, where he like, they grabs and holds up Simba, right? Like I'm grabbed and taken upward, like through the dimensions, right through the ceiling. And as I glance back and see my body sleeping there, and this energy, black energy orb over my body, all of a sudden there's this like knight's armor glowing like white and blue light energy like knight with wings comes down into my room, and I see this giant sword that is on fire, blue fire. And right as I'm going upward, I look back and I just see it slice like this and literally just slice this black orb energy that's negative, that's like siphoning energy from me. It just like poof, and it just disappears. And so
Wow.
as I'm going upward, I don't even know who grabbed me. I didn't see anything. I just felt myself going up, and like I was in the hands of God and he had me and I was good. And as I'm going up, I thought to myself, who was that? And I heard Saint Michael. Like that was the response, Saint Michael. And I didn't know who Saint Michael was at the time. And then I realized Archangel Michael is God's warrior angel. Now, there's a whole bunch of other warrior angels too. There's Legion angels and all the things. I've since learned that I have a really strong connection, and there was a reason that experience happened. And I feel like we're all connected to everything. I'm just going to say it. One of my connections, I know that I've on the higher realms, I've been in Michael's army and the blue electric angels. And so I feel like that was an awakening. And I feel like one of the reasons a lot of us get attacked when we're kids is because you're really powerful and really special, every single one of you who are watching this. And you all have
Exactly.
unique connections and abilities. And some of the really shitty things that happened to you in your life were because, you know, you were a threat to the bad side. You're a good guy or a good gal, and you have a whole bunch of support behind you, more than you could ever imagine. And I didn't know that when I was a little kid. And some of these experiences have reawoken me to the, you know, really the divine love of God, the universe, Christ, Mary, Michael. And I'm going to go this because everything's, you know, if you're watching this, you're like, oh, he's a Christian. I do believe in Christ, and I believe Christ is one of, on a personal level, someone I follow as a great ascended master and all he's done, the Christ consciousness and everything. But I also believe there's other ascended masters, because in a later show, we can talk about it again. But I had a near death experience in college, induced by myself by being an idiot, and I went completely out of body. And Lord Shiva came to me. I'm not a Hindu. At that point in my life, I was an atheist, and I've had Lord Shiva come to me, in addition to Lord Michael, in addition to Mary. So there's a lot of things I can talk about in my experiences, but I think the entire benevolent realm of God's creation is helping humanity at this time, and they will send down whoever you need to help you, if you're open, and if you're, you know, your heart's pure and your intent's pure, and you're trying to do right by yourself and others. And so I'll just say, you know, Sharon, thank you again for having me on here and share these experiences. I'm so grateful for you and for the whole audience. You guys are amazing. The fact that you would watch something like this and be open-minded, and hopefully something that was said today, God has a magical way of working, and so does the universe, through synchronicity and signs. But hopefully something that was said today helped you remember something or validate something, or is just one more piece in the quilt of knowing all of humanity.
Beautiful.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you, Andy. As
Yeah.
always, it's a pleasure, and we'll definitely talk again. We have our galactic updates on Tuesday, if you can make that this next Tuesday, a week from today. But yeah, and thank you everyone for being here. And please like and subscribe and do all that good stuff. And we'll see you again soon.
I'm Sharon Kumara, and you have been listening to Awaken Soul Radio on Transformation Talk Radio. I invite you to embark on a transformative journey with us. Awaken Soul is a safe, sacred space for exploring the depths of our consciousness. Each episode, you will be inspired to shed the illusions that bind you, connect more deeply with your inner wisdom, and step into a liberating life of freedom, clarity, and purpose. To connect with me, visit kumaraacademy.com.